Hey guys, Cody with CJC Off-Road, and today we'll be doing a roundup of the 03 to 12 Ram T-style steering options. Now we've put together the 3 options that we feel are the best options on the market for you. There are other part store alternatives, things like that out there, but in our experience, and it's a lot of years of experience, those just simply do not stand the test of time. However, the 3 options before me today, the Mopar T-style factory steering linkage, the Apex steering linkage, as well as the Synergy steering linkage, are 3 excellent options for those of you with 03 to 08.5 trucks looking to make the upgrade to the T-style steering, or even the 09 to 12 trucks looking to just upgrade their factory steering linkage. So diving in, first we have the Mopar 08.5 T-style steering. Now for those of you who have a 08.5 and up truck going to the 2012s, this is most likely the stock linkage on your truck. However, if you do have a 03 to the 08.5 year, your truck has the Y-style steering. This is a very common upgrade. You're gonna need to get the pitman arm off the 08.5 trucks, and then you'll get this T-style linkage. We sell all of that, and that is gonna upgrade you to the T-style linkage. Now, for many, many years, this was the gold standard of steering replacements. We used it very often on our personal trucks. A lot of the trucks you see in the jumping videos and stuff from our early days are all running this steering linkage without issue. However, when you do run 37-inch tires, you will find yourself going through these tie rod ends probably every 25,000 miles or so if you are putting really hard use on the truck like we were. Now, this is the steering design for this truck. So as far as the linkage, the overall design, the adjustability, it is very simple. Adjusting this setup, there is just these 2 clamps, one on the drag link, one on the tie rod. Very straightforward to align, very straightforward to center your steering wheel, things like that. The stabilizer, again, is going to be your factory low mount steering stabilizer for an 08.5 and up truck. So there's options from Bilstein, Icon, Carly, Thurin. We carry all those options. And again, if you do get a dual stabilizer or you already have a dual stabilizer from company XYZ that sells those, that's going to clamp directly to this factory linkage. Again, it is a straightforward swap for those of you with existing dual stabilizers, things like that. So from there, looking directly at the joint that Mopar includes, one of the first things you'll notice missing is a Zerk fitting. An early forum mod was to drill and tap the factory sheet metal cover, add a Zerk. We never did that on our personal trucks on the West Coast, and we never really found that it really expanded the longevity of the trucks, or of the steering tie rod ends, excuse me. Now, speaking of longevity, one thing I want to note right off the top, if you do have a T-style linkage and you want to replace a tie rod end, on each bar, there are 2 joints that require you to replace the whole bar as far as servicing it goes. So if you do need to replace a joint, the lower joint on your drag link or the passenger joint on the tie rod, the whole bar must be replaced, which is extremely costly. And in fact, when you do try to buy these individual components from Mopar, it gets you pretty close to the overall cost of the kit, meaning most guys, when they need to replace these joints, put a fresh linkage on. Now, they used to be much cheaper to do as well. Slowly, Mopar has ratcheted up the price of these setups, so it has gotten a little more costly, and that's why these aftermarket options do start to look a little bit more attractive. Now, one thing when you buy this Mopar 08.5 steering linkage from us, it is true Mopar linkage. It is not a part store replacement, and you're actually getting the complete setup. Some guys will try to leave off the stabilizer clamp as a loss leader, making their listing online cheaper, or they're not going to include the nuts. So as simple as that sounds, when you buy this linkage part number from Mopar, you're not getting the nuts that literally mount it to your steering linkage. We include those as well, so you're not reusing old hardware and things like that. Now, this specific joint, we took an angle grinder, popped one of these open. You're gonna find an all metal wear surface along with the forged ball from the factory. Now, again, this is actually a pretty solid solution for most customers. Again, going back to the parts store alternatives, you're gonna find a plastic race in 99% of those parts store replacement tie rods, which is why we heavily discourage them. The weight of these trucks, 37-inch tires, means that plastic's gonna compress quite quickly, leaving just a poor loose steering setup. Now again, it's gonna be a forged pin. There are not grease grooves in any of this, hence why there's also no grease zerks from the factory. Again, some guys state that they've actually seen it last longer. However, in our experience, not so much the case. You will notice that the wear surface is only on this ring, leaving the top and fair amount of the sides exposed. So the wear surface is only pushing on, again, where this ring rubs against the tie rod ball, which is probably why these setups do not last a couple 100,000 miles. But again, overall lifespan is pretty good. For the price point, I would say this steering is an excellent option. On my personal 3rd gen trucks, I haven't owned one in a couple years. This is what I had always run with extremely good luck. Occasionally, after one too many jumps in the dunes, we would need to replace a joint. However, overall, for 99% of consumers who aren't jumping their trucks, these are an excellent option. Now, from there, that does not mean this steering is the end-all be-all, and we do have aftermarket options that we do feel are better and are going to give you longer longevity as far as tie rod wear, front-end performance, and things like that. Now, first, we're going to have the Apex option. A is earlier in the alphabet. Is pretty much the only reason we can figure out why that one would have come before Synergy. That is not putting one above the other. It's kind of just how they ended up on our table. Now, the Apex option is a rather new option. I think we've been carrying this linkage for about a year now. But prior to this, they offered Jeep solutions for a lot of years, and the owners of this company are actually from one of the major ball joint brands from many moons before. So they do have a lot of experience in front ends, tie rod ends, ball joints, and things like that. Jumping into this, my personal Super Duty, even though that's not really related to this video, ran some of the early prototype Apex joints, so I'm speaking from some experience. The joint lifespan on that setup seemed to be pretty good. That truck was jumped, things like that, and stayed tight. Overall linkage design, again, this is going to be the T-style steering. So there's really not much to say there. The drag link comes down, picks up the tie rod. Bam, that is your T-style linkage. Adjustability on this setup is a little bit more difficult than both options. I would say compared to the three, it is a little bit harder to adjust. You'll notice there are large jam nuts on each end of both the drag link and the tie rod. So when you do want to make toe changes as well as centering your steering wheel, you are going to need to release both those jam nuts and spin both links in order to align the truck. Now you'll notice this fancy washer is well on the jam nuts. That is their Ninja lock washer. You essentially bend, it's like a safety washer. You're going to bend tabs both over the linkage as well as the jam nut, and that's going to keep it from coming loose. Now, the best defense about a loose jam nut coming loose on any steering track bar or anything like that is just going to be proper torque. Cool thing about Apex, they actually have a crow's foot that we sell as well. It is a kit that you can put on your torque wrench and tighten these properly. So that is, again, another thing to note. One other thing to note that you're going to see on this table, this is the thickest diameter steering out there, so you will see less deflection. Now, deflection is not exactly common in any of these setups, but as 37-inch tires become the norm and customers push the limits bigger and bigger to bigger tires, that will be a concern. However, this setup, again, being the thickest diameter, is going to basically allow for zero deflection. Now, the downside of that thicker diameter is going to be stabilizer compatibility. You cannot use your factory steering stabilizer clamp on the Apex linkage. And if you have a dual stabilizer or any other kind of stabilizer that has its own built-in clamp, you will need to get a different clamp as the diameter is much thicker than stock. Now, with that said, we do have stabilizer clamps for both a factory style stabilizer, again, one that would be found stock on an 08.5 to 12 truck. We have an ATS clamp to mount the Fox ATSs to the tie rod. The Carly low mount is going to be completely compatible. The Thurn, again, Icon, Bilstein, all those options are going to be compatible with just the standard clamp for the tie rod. For a high mount steering stabilizer, we actually have our own CJC machined clamp to mount the Carly suspension high mount stabilizer to the Apex drag link as well. So there's a ton of options for stabilizers there. Again, the only downside being for the guys who have an existing T-style dual stabilizer from a different brand, you are going to need to source bigger U-bolts, things like that. A lot of those setups kind of use a lot of proprietary parts, so your mileage may vary there, and you may not be able to adapt that dual stabilizer setup to this linkage. Now, again, that's going to happen across the board, so keep that in mind. Unless your linkage is, again, this factory format, a lot of those setups are not cross-compatible. Now, moving on to the ends, this Apex joint is much larger, just the physical forged ball that you're going to see, than the Mopar joint. Then you're going to see a much larger wear surface. So instead of a wear surface that's probably the size of a wedding ring, if you will, you have this much larger wear surface that encapsulates the whole top of the ball. You're going to have a grease groove, therefore making the grease zerks usable. You're not just pumping grease on top of the joint. It's actually able to get around as it rotates. It's lubricating the whole wear surface. And that is all preloaded by I'm probably using the wrong term, this rubber washer right here. So that's going to keep tension on this so that if you ever were to say hit a curb with your 37-inch tire, the Mopar joint, once you hit it, once it breaks loose, that surface is now pushed up and it's going to be loose from then on. A joint like this with some kind of preload to it will be able to take those hits, have that wear surface push back down and keep that joint tighter for longer. So that is why something like this, an aftermarket option is just going to last literally longer than the Mopar option, and it's all going to be in the joint. Now, you also have to note this extremely beefy forged end that the apex joints have. Again, using that center adjuster design leaves them with this very large end. I don't think you'll ever break that, and it feels like you could pretty much put that through a glass window with ease. So as far as beefiness, the apex is probably going to win there. It is just a big, strong, and heavy-duty setup. Now again, with that multi-piece design, if you were to put your truck in the rocks, do something crazy and wear out one of these joints, it is easily replaceable, right? So you do not have to buy a whole new linkage. You would thread out your bad end, put in your new end, realign the truck, you're good to go. From that aspect, you have the warranty. With Mopar, there is essentially no warranty. You buy this linkage, they're gonna tell you that didn't come on your truck, the dealership's not responsible. So when this does wear, you are responsible as the owner of the truck to, again, get new joints, upgrade it, etc. Apex has their lifetime warranty. Now, it can be read on their website. Essentially, what they're telling you is if you do wear this out, they're gonna send you a new joint. So if you do wear out one of these joints, call them up, submit your warranty claim, and they're gonna send you a replacement. And again, that replacement is gonna be easily replaced versus replacing complete links, things like that. Now, moving on to the last steering linkage in our lineup is gonna be the Synergy steering. Now, this is the longest running aftermarket steering that we've been selling. Customer feedback for the last, I'd say 8 years or so has been excellent. Again, the Apex is the newest offering, but again, we are only trying to bring solid options to the table. Diving right on in, the Synergy steering, again, is gonna be that T-style steering. Gonna bolt right up to a 09 and up truck pitman arm and then to the T-style pitman arm on the 03 to 08 trucks. Now, moving on to the steering linkage itself, the Synergy manufacturing actual linkage, so all the tube work, etc., is actually made in Central California. So that portion of the steering is all USA made. The joints are imported as they are on all of the options on this table. Just kind of part of how that industry has shifted in the last few years. Being that these are hand welded bars, they are post-weld heat treated. Now, as of 2024, this video filmed in early 24, Synergy has actually made a handful of updates based upon all of their feedback for the last few years of selling the steering linkage. That's going to be new joints on the tie rod. Previously, they had used a wobble stopper design. Now, both joints on both sides of the Synergy linkage are gated, which means it can't flop and flip like a lot of aftermarket steering options do. They've also adjusted the angle where the drag link comes and meets the tie rods. The mounting hole is actually angled, so the joint is perfectly centered or kind of sitting at a natural or neutral position. Therefore, it doesn't start off at an angle. So for those with crazy high lift setups or extremely long travel setups, the joint's going to be sitting in a better position for longer. And yeah, the Synergy steering is essentially an excellent option. Again, the linkage itself made in the USA, so that's going to be a big perk to a lot of guys out there. The joints, moving on to those, they're extremely simple to service. So again, not like the Mopar 08.5 steering where you have to throw away half the linkage when replacing an end. The Synergy end can just get a new joint at the specific end if it is to wear out. So it's very slick there. Now, another thing to note on these joints, because the bend is actually in the bar, the joints are more affordable as well, right? It's a more compact, simpler component. So these are very cheap to replace if you did need to replace them 5-7 years down the line. And again, we've been selling these for 8 to 10 years already. So we know Synergy is here to stay and those joints are always going to be available. Moving on to the warranty, Synergy has a lifetime warranty against defects in the bars, breakages, issues with the welds, all of that good stuff is going to be a lifetime warranty. However, the joints are considered a wear item. Again, they can be purchased separately for actually what I would say very cheap. So if you did ever develop play, again, it would be a ton of miles away, 50, 100,000 miles away before you would ever see play. The joints are easily replaceable and cheaply acquired. Now, diving right on into the Synergy joint, Synergy also has arguably a ton of years doing steering joints, starting again in the Jeep world, moving into the Dodge world many years ago, and they've even moved into other platforms in recent years. So they've had a lot of time to perfect their joints as well. Again, this is going to be a larger both ball and wear surface than included with your factory steering. Moving on to this wear surface, again, you're going to have a ball with grease grooves, therefore rendering these zerks actually useful. So you can grease this steering for those of you guys in harsher climates, etc. Again, you're going to have the larger wear surface than stock pushing down on the top, and that is going to be preloaded by a spring. Now, the beauty of the spring is that when, again, say you were to hit a curb with a 37-inch tire, you're going to really put a lot of shock through that joint. Again, the factory joint will just become loose. This setup, this spring is able to absorb that impact and keep the joint tight. So again, you're gonna have forged ends, just like the other options, a larger ball as well as a larger wear surface, basically resulting in just a longer steering tie rod end life. That is a mouthful. These two aftermarket options are just going to have larger wear surfaces as compared to stock, meaning longer lifespan in your joints. And also, again, the preloading elements are gonna keep those joints tighter longer. Now moving on, again, I briefly touched on it, stabilizers. Again, just like Apex, if you do have a dual stabilizer setup going to either your Mopar Y or T, it is probably not gonna be compatible. Now, by the end of 2024, Synergy will have their own dual stabilizer kit for this 03 to 12 Ram steering. However, it's not currently on the market. So again, right now, it'll be a T-style factory replacement that bolts up no problem. And they do include a nice clamp that comes with the steering linkage. Now, one thing to note, also, you may find that you see steering linkage cheaper than what we sell it for in other websites online. That is something they're using to draw you in and sell you a setup without a clamp. So you're gonna receive 2 boxes instead of 3. So just be aware, we try not to do anything like that and just sell you a complete steering linkage. Now, wrapping up this roundup, I don't think I missed too much. You will see that both the Apex and Synergy use castle nut cotter pins, where the Mopar T-style uses a nylock nut. Neither of those have ever worn out, so I don't think you're ever gonna see an issue there. And yeah, hopefully I answered your questions. If you do have more questions about these steering linkages, give us a call, shoot us an email, comment on this video. We'd be happy to answer the questions with any answers that we may have. Now, some of you are gonna ask some real nitty-gritty details about the Rockwell harness, things like that. That is information that we simply do not have, but what we do have is the linkage right in front of us and a lot of years of experience. You cannot go wrong with any of these 3 options. However, I do think if you are running 37s, pushing the truck hard off-road, you're gonna wanna look at the Apex and Synergy options, as they're just gonna last you longer than, say, this Mopar T-style steering. Again, any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Give this video a like if you haven't, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next one.